Изменение климата сейчас становится очень таким трендовым, да, понятием.
We know the climate is changing.
How do you feel this approach is reasonable for Kazakhstan?
Когда мы принимаем определенные цели, пусть это будут глобальные, пусть это будут национальные цели, должны быть услышаны все.
Think global, act local.
Это и говорит о том, что местное население тех времен лучше знает, как управлять экосистемами и биоразнообразием.
Я себя поймал на мысли, что мои дети как-то лучше меня знают, как нужно сохранять, там, охранять. This is nice. Yes, welcome to Kazakhstan. Добрый день всем, рады всех видеть. Мы, наконец, возобновляем свой подкаст, который называется «1,5 градуса». Мы начинали его несколько лет назад. Он был всего лишь в аудиоверсии. Сейчас мы провели апгрейд. Теперь у нас подкаст и в видеоверсии. Будем рады, если вы останетесь с нами. У нас запланировано несколько подкастов с интересными людьми. Сегодня мы хотели бы поговорить о том, как изменение климата и биоразнообразие линкуются друг с другом. Есть вопросы того, что изменение климата сейчас становится очень таким трендовым, да, понятием. Все говорят об изменении климата и все такое. Но все равно у большинства людей биоразнообразие – это важнейший экологический вопрос. И когда вы спрашиваете людях об охране окружающей среды, они сразу говорят, это нужно охранять зверей и все прочее. И поэтому нам важно сейчас вот поговорить о том, чтобы как биоразнообразие и изменение климата могут существовать вместе, делать какие-то вместе проекты. И со мной вместе мои коллеги. Я попрошу их представиться.
Добрый вечер, да, всем. Очень рада быть здесь. Спасибо, что пригласили. Представлюсь, меня зовут Айнур Шалаханова. Я являюсь финансовым аналитиком в области охраны окружающей среды в инициативе под названием BioFin, Biodiversity Finance Initiative. И я, получается, курирую регион, получается, Тихоокеанский и Азиатский регион.
Okay, then we have next guest, is Josh. Josh, please introduce yourself. Tell a little bit about yourself, what you're doing, what is your services, expertise.
Great. Thank you very much, Saalet, for having us here. I'm very excited to be here and speak about biodiversity. My name is Josh Bränn. I'm an international technical advisor on biodiversity for UNDP in Kazakhstan. And I've worked on biodiversity conservation issues for more years than I should say, probably now, more than 20 years. And I've worked a lot in Central Asia, working on different initiatives, different projects, on wetlands, on snow leopards, on forests here in Kazakhstan, and a variety of other issues in the region and also in many other regions in the world. I think in total I've had the opportunity to visit almost 80 countries, working
wow,
on biodiversity conservation projects. So it's great to be here and to have the opportunity to discuss these issues with you. Thanks very much.
Okay. Where are you from originally?
I'm originally from Alaska.
Alaska?
Yeah.
Wow.
So the winter time in Astana makes me feel very at home, very comfortable. So.
This is nice. Yes. Welcome to Kazakhstan. Thank you.
Good. Thank you.
Actually, what I want to know, it's just for yourself. What is the synergy between climate change and biodiversity conservation? I understand that some, climatic conditions affect to the, let's say, animals and to the ecosystems, but maybe you have some, your own words about this.
I think, climate change and biodiversity have a lot of aspects that are closely interlinked. And on the one hand, biodiversity can be negatively impacted by climate change. Mm-hmm. On the other hand, biodiversity and ecosystems can help increase resilience to climate change and increase our ability to adapt to climate change. So, one of the most critical and key things is that intact ecosystems are more resilient to climate change. So we know the climate is changing. Things will be happening in terms of more extreme weather events, other types of climatic conditions in certain areas, more rainfall, in certain areas, less rainfall. But if we have ecosystems that are actually robust and intact, then they have a better ability to withstand some of those changes in climate change and those effects. And that can benefit people as well. So at the same time, you have situations here, for example, in Kazakhstan, where you may have increasing number of forest fires, and the number of when the forest burns, that contributes to climate change also by releasing increased amounts of carbon, and also is negative for biodiversity. So it can also be a very negative feedback cycle where you have climate impacts that negatively affect biodiversity, and then degraded ecosystems and degraded biodiversity then contribute to further climate change. So that's a situation that we're working hard to avoid.
Maybe the question can be, is the biodiversity projects or whatever, they can be some kind of instrument to do the world more sustainable or more resilient to the climate change issues? How do you feel?
Yeah, exactly. There are a lot of approaches to addressing climate change, mitigating climate change, adapting to climate change that focus on ecosystem-based approaches. Some of the things we talked about, planting trees or increasing, ensuring the good functioning of wetlands, of mountain ecosystems, of rivers, all these approaches of conserving and working on these types of biodiversity and ecosystems can really help mitigate climate change and address climate change as well.
Yeah, I believe this is really interesting questions. But actually, for all of that, we need some kind of actions which is rise from political will, which is right from community request, let's say like this. And for that, there was special a project was built, which is Biofin, and Biofin, it's an interesting global project, I believe, yes, and it's realized in how many countries is participating in that?
So actually Biofin is growing in last years, and nowadays we are a community of 132 countries.
Wow, that's almost all world. So we have 210 countries in the world.
And we are still growing.
Okay.
Yes, so nowadays we are having 2 programs across the world, and Kazakhstan is one of the country, who joined on early stages. And if we are, speaking more about the Kazakhstan context, then I would say that we started the implementation in the end of 2013. So nowadays it's more than 10 years we're implementing Biofin.
А вообще вот эта система Biofin, точнее система проектов Biofin, она как бы была изначально... Сколько стран туда входило до этого, не знаете, какое количество начиналось?
Вообще, по идее, инициатива Biofin стартовала в 2012 году.
Или 2013?
В 2012 году глобально.
Глобально.
Казахстан присоединился в конце 2013 года и стал 7-й страной, которая присоединилась к инициативе Biofin.
На тот момент было 7 стран, и получается за это время 7 стран увеличилось до 152. Это впечатляющий прогресс на самом деле.
Да, 132 страны сейчас, и мы, это вот такое число, которое сейчас меняется, и мы растем с каждым днем. Поэтому,
Кто последний был присоединился?
Последние присоединились 91 страна.
Сразу?
То есть многое зависит, конечно, от финансирования.
Да, конечно,
и последние присоединились 91 страна в рамках финансирования ГЭФ, глобального экологического фонда. И в принципе пропозал был подан разными странами, и уже там по ходу был определенный процесс, через который проходили все страны. Я сейчас точно не могу сказать, кто был последней страной.
Да. At the very beginning, in 1992, I believe, there was 2 conventions was created. The one was Climate Change Convention, which is we call it UNFC, United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change. The other one was CBD, which is Convention on Biodiversity.
Yeah.
Right now, both of these conventions was divided by few, international treaties. Let's say for the climate change, it was Kyoto Protocol, Paris Agreement, some regional initiatives. For the Convention on Biodiversity, we had Convention on Migratory Birds. We have the Wetlands Convention, CITES. And the other one, it's a Kunming protocol. I believe it's somewhere in the field of biodiversity. Do you have some information about it? What is this initiative?
There's two things that I think you may have been thinking of. One is the Cartagena Protocol, which is about biosafety. But the most recent, or one of the most recent developments at the global level on biodiversity is the Kunming Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework. And so that's the global strategy for conserving biodiversity. And the vision is to live in harmony, humans living in harmony with nature.
That's a good idea.
Yeah, exactly. It's something we are all hoping for, but to actually achieve that, there's a number of concrete and specific goals and targets that are included in the strategy. So there are 4 goals to be achieved by 2050 and 23 targets that are foreseen to be steps in that direction that should be achieved by 2030 as well. So that's sort of the big global strategy on biodiversity conservation that also does have some linkages with climate change as well.
Yeah, of course, because the climate conditions is the one of the main, say, we call it in Russian, ресурсообразующие, что ли. And what is happening with the climate just always reflect to the ecosystems, I believe. Yeah. But for me, it's interesting why there is 2 cities inside of the name, the Kunming and Montreal. Why there was some idea behind it.
Yeah, well, that was one of the side effects of COVID, I think. So,
okay.
The meeting was initially supposed to be held in Kunming, China.
Okay. It was in 2020, I believe.
Yeah, something like this. And then it had to be changed, canceled, and then the meeting was finished or concluded in Montreal. And so the actual framework and the strategy that was developed was partially developed in both places, actually. Yeah. I think there's the importance is to recognize the contributions of both China and Canada in actually helping develop and bring that strategy into existence. So
that's interesting because I like these historical things about the climate treaties, at least, because I'm a little bit know more about the climate change, but I know almost nothing about the biodiversity projects.
Yeah. There's actually one of the targets in the strategy, and target 8 talks about the importance of ensuring that biodiversity is harmed, doing as much as we can to minimize the amount of damage on biodiversity from climate change, and also ensuring resilience to climate change through ecosystem-based approaches and adaptation and those aspects. So it's actually fully recognized in the biodiversity strategy how important climate change is, both in terms of potentially impacting ecosystems and biodiversity, as we've mentioned, and the role that biodiversity can play in helping address climate change.
Ainur mentioned that Kazakhstan was one of the first countries there to participate in the biofin program, and it's look like that if we connected to this movement earlier, then it's look like we should do more than other countries till now. I mean, we had some distance to start, and maybe you can share about your vision how Kazakhstan is going in this program or with biodiversity conservation, the projects.
And maybe you mentioned it already, but some of the solutions that Biofin is looking at in Kazakhstan relate to climate change as well, right?
I agree with you, Saulet, fully that as early we're starting, then we have more results to show, because every activity needs a time to implement in the country, and especially when we are speaking about some legislation work, then we need more time to implement these activities. And I can show an example from, for example, biodiversity assets, a finance solution implementing in Kazakhstan since 2016. I will say that we need a 5 year to do the feasibility study, to to speak with our partners, to acknowledge them about this finance solution, because it is new for country, it is new for for our governments, and to acknowledge about this and to include in their ecological code that happened in 2021.
Mm-hmm.
So in BioF in Kazakhstan, we're implementing currently 6-7 finance solution, and all of them related somehow to climate change.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the greatest example, I would say, that carbon offsets.
Mm-hmm.
So we are conserving forest, and through conservation of the forest, we are contributing to climate change goals.
It was not invention of the climate change. Before there was, if you remember, there was a problem of AC trains in the north of America, I believe, and there was introduced quotas on production, and they're trying to implement the cap and trade system between the enterprises. And after that, those AC trains stops. And this, it was like a, preliminary cap and trade system, which is introduced in the climate change. So right now we see that how it's how these things is going to the biodiversity and helping to protect the climate, and in same time to protect and maybe manage the areas of where the wildlife is introducing and live. So it's very nice one to know it.
Yeah,
actually.
But what we're seeing now actually is that in the carbon market, that a lot of demand for carbon credits is increasingly looking to purchase and to be supportive of and to seek out carbon credits that also have nature-related co-benefits. So, if there's a carbon mitigation project or a carbon offset project that is actually has benefits beyond, related to biodiversity, related to ecosystems, particularly one of the best examples is just in the context of forestry, in dealing with forests, that you can have a lot of biodiversity benefits if you're also having carbon and climate change benefits. And so in the carbon market, any carbon credits that have nature-related benefits are also selling at a higher price than if it's just a carbon credit by itself.
Do we have some kind of, national strategy, whatever, for the biodiversity or national action plan?
Actually, I can step in here. As Josh explained that we have this global framework called Global Biodiversity Framework in Montreal, and every country should to have the national biodiversity strategy and action plan.
Okay.
And Kazakhstan is currently developing this.
Yes.
So actually in Kazakhstan it's called not the National Biodiversity Strategy and Action Plan, shortly NBSAP, but because of our a structure of different strategic document, we're calling this concept for biodiversity conservation. So we have team who already developed the targets which align it with
indicators.
With indicators, with different activities which align it with the global, global targets. And unfortunately, in Kazakhstan, this concept, this NBSAP, never was adopted officially. But it should be officially adopted. So in Kazakhstan currently, we don't have any official document which recognize biodiversity and
as a priority for the
and also to have a strategic document in the country mean that governments doing strategic, they have strategic vision for this, sector approach.
I work in the project which is NAP, National Adaptation Planning. It's also the plan, it's National Adaptation Plan, and it also should be like adopted by the government or decree or whatever. And we have the same problem actually.
Oh, okay.
But what we did is we had several consultations with the Ministry of Ecology, and we decided that this document will be included in the strategical documents of the government. I mean, the strategy 2050 strategy, carbon neutrality strategy. So the parts of this adaptation planning will become the parts of these national strategies. Maybe this approach is also okay for the NDSA.
Yeah, we also tried this way, with the concept for biodiversity conservation. And actually, we have the green transition plan, right? And we also recognize this on the global level. In Kazakhstan level, it also occurs that when we're speaking about the green something, it not actually mean biodiversity.
Yes.
Sometimes we are saying about the green, and it is about the new infrastructure, the renewable energies, but nothing related to biodiversity. That's why it was, too hard to introduce the concept for biodiversity conservation in the green transition strategy.
It's actually, I think, can be a positive thing if the NBSAP, the concept is integrated in other higher level strategies. I think that's one of the key aspects of success for biodiversity conservation is ensuring that it's mainstreamed and integrated in other strategies and other sectors and at the higher national level in terms of the national development strategy. And some of the relevant indicators can be included there as well. It's just important that the national strategy has a relationship with the global strategy, that the global targets have some relationship to the national targets and vice versa. And so, having that sort of global national perspective is really important in, understanding how the work that Kazakhstan is doing, the goals and ambitions on biodiversity conservation at the national level can actually support the global goals and the global targets. So that kind of global, think global, act local saying is really important in the context of biodiversity because, it's also as similar, as related as biodiversity and climate change may be, there are actually quite a lot of differences also between climate change and carbon and dealing with carbon and biodiversity. A ton of carbon in Kazakhstan is the same as a ton of carbon in any other part of the world. Biodiversity is very different in each part of the world, in each place, and it's not measured in tons. We actually don't have the perfect way to measure biodiversity actually in the world right now.
Same for adaptation. You cannot create a very clear adaptation to climate change. I mean, you cannot create the very clear indicators.
Yeah,
it's about the about the humanity and also about the way of thinking. Let's say like this: resource saving systems should be introduced everywhere, but how to measure it? It's really hard.
Yeah. It's a challenge. There's more than, I don't know, some 3,000 indicators or metrics that are used in different contexts around the world to measure biodiversity. So, we can't really apply all 3,000 of them in any one case, in any one situation, in any one country. In the context of Kazakhstan, maybe indicators related to tropical forests are not so relevant, indicators related to ice and snow and cold ecosystems may be very relevant. But there is actually progress happening at the global level on identifying at least a common set of approaches and indicators on how to measure the state of nature and how to measure biodiversity.
Of course, it's a matter of thinking of the government itself, how to proceed. Include it, create the new strategy or the new plan, and it should be separately document with all needed applications, or it's okay to include in other strategies.
That's, I think, one of the challenges, even though climate change and biodiversity have many interlinkages, one of the challenges of addressing them in an integrated way is that different parts of the government deal with different issues, in different ways. They have kind of these silos or specific institutional responsibilities that they don't get together a lot and work together and talk to each other. These issues do have real strong importance for both biodiversity and climate change. So that's one of the challenges. And so when we can find ways to mainstream and integrate biodiversity approaches and indicators in other sectors and other parts of the government as well, it's has a lot of benefits.
The question how, let's say, when you're going to some, governmental institutions and saying, look, we have to work with the biodiversity, there is several indicators. It's okay for example, for the Ministry of Agriculture, Ministry of Ecology. What about this industrial ministries, other
Ministry of Energy?
Energy, how they can participate in this program,
Nature is the heart of everything. So everything, around us, it is the nature, and everyone should contribute to the nature-saving activities. And it was example on today's, a workshop that we have the big highway in Almaty region that just divided the route of Kulans, and now they're just separated, and they couldn't, go across this road. So it is one of the example when we are going to the Ministry of Transportation and then saying, no, we are not related to biodiversity, but you are actually. And nowadays, we also have, on the global level, acknowledged that even the finance sector, they all depends from the nature.
We actually have in California right now is being constructed the world's largest wildlife overpass over the highway.
Wow!
So it's
how does it look like?
It's very nice. It's very beautiful ecosystem going just on a bridge over the road.
Wow.
So
over the bridge.
But yeah, it's not cheap. But I think there is increasing awareness and recognition that nature and biodiversity is actually about economics and the importance of the economy to every country and companies and industry have an important role in that as well. At the global level, 55% of the global GDP is directly dependent on nature. And so if we don't take care of nature and we don't ensure that biodiversity is conserved, then it's really just creating
it's
economic
a big share,
problems.
55%.
Yeah, exactly. And it's probably higher in Kazakhstan, considering how dependent the country is on agriculture and the role that natural resources play in employment and the economy. So it's an important discussion to continue having with the private sector, with industry about the relationships between economy and nature. But it's really important to recognize that to have a sustainable society, have a sustainable economy, and to conserve nature that we all depend on really requires a so-called whole of government or whole of society approach, which includes the private sector, which includes industry and their involvement in, taking steps to finance the conservation of nature and ensure that the impacts and risks related to nature are minimized.
You mentioned that you work like international technical advisor, yes? And what are you doing for our country? I mean, for Kazakhstan, what your purpose of your work?
My role is to help bring some of this, a strategic approach to addressing biodiversity conservation in Kazakhstan and to link it with the global level as well. So, helping to develop ideas, new projects, new concepts, but also helping to align them into a common vision and to a common approach to nature conservation and biodiversity conservation in Kazakhstan. So, UNDP has a certain strategy about how to approach nature conservation, founded on the basic principle that putting nature as we've been discussing, but at the heart of sustainable development and the role that nature can play in contributing to the sustainable development goals. And so, we'll be looking at how to support the existing portfolio of work that's on nature conservation in Kazakhstan, but also how to increase the coherence of the work that's going on together, among all the projects and with other work that's going on in climate change in other areas, land degradation under the UN Convention to Combat Desertification. So there's more than four.
Yes, it's a lot, but before, at the beginning, it was four, I believe.
The three Rio conventions are the CBD, the UNFCCC, and the
UNCCD. Combat desertification, yes. Do you have some kind of examples how biodiversity initiatives was integrated in the national agenda?
If I would speak about, one of the greatest examples, I would say that Philippines, they're doing a great job with biofilm. They're also implementing around 10 years, and they started with working with protected areas and increasing the state budget for protected areas. Providing the connection in the law. And nowadays they have, the great increase on their budget for protected areas. But nowadays they are more concentrated on different technologies for biodiversity. So just 1 year ago, they introduced the mobile app. And you can, upload this app and play. And all this, so when you are playing this app, you are earning some, a digital money. And tech company, national tech company, converting this digital money to actual money and planting the trees on this money. I think it is very creative and very innovative finance solution that we can implement in our countries.
How do you feel this approach is reasonable for Kazakhstan?
I would say yes, because we're also very, a technological, I will say, a country. We have
everybody have cell phones.
Yeah, and also everything now in, even we can pay with our mobile, everything in our mobile, and you can entertain yourself, but you're doing, it's like a lazy environmentalist. And I would say Kazakhstan also one of the advanced countries in biofilm, and we're doing also increasing the state budget for protected areas through result-based budgeting, introduction to result-based budgeting.
I think from my perspective, some of the things that countries do that are really positive for, taking a strong, broad approach to biodiversity conservation and nature conservation is, really integrating biodiversity-related indicators into national development strategies. So, government agencies are accountable to, the results that they are required to deliver based on government strategies and plans and the results frameworks for those plans and strategies. So if you have biodiversity indicators directly incorporated in national development strategy results frameworks, then that's one very positive way. I mean, the other increasingly growing trend is for countries to adopt this system for environmental and economic accounting in the national accounting system. So to actually really integrate accounting for nature in their national accounting. And, then again, it's a way of recognizing the economic value that nature has for the countries. And so, a few countries around the world are doing this. Actually, many are making progress on it. A number of countries in Africa are making progress on this. Uganda is one country that's doing something in that direction. So, it's another area of work that I think could be further developed in Central Asia in general and probably in Kazakhstan as well.
Okay. What about for me is also was very interesting when you were speaking about the biodiversity, conservation of biodiversity, whatever. And for me, it was very interesting when I participated in the Conference of the Parties of CITES, I believe. There was a big not a deal, but like a big debate on the traditionalist and the innovators. The traditionalist was they more present the view from the communities, which is Eskimos, they always hunting for the whales, and they want to keep this tradition. But the Nova people, they saying no, we cannot kill the whales because they are very few in the world, and we have to preserve it. How to make a peace between those two approaches? Do you have some, I don't know, not a recipe, but maybe some ideas on that?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of challenges around those types of specific issues. I think, one of the increasingly important things is to have this kind of voice from the local communities and the indigenous peoples included in the discussion and in the debate directly, and not just, on the side or, being sort of
not from
spoken to from a distance or something like that, So I think there is an increasing recognition of that importance. And at the last CBD COP in Colombia, actually in October, a little over a month ago, I was fortunate enough to be there for part of the time and participate in the discussions and the events. And it was actually at that Conference of Parties that they officially recognized the role of indigenous peoples and local communities and developed a formal, specific administrative role for that stakeholder group to participate in the official process of the Conference of Parties. So that was another step forward for progress in that area. And there's no single voice for indigenous peoples and local communities around the world.
Окружающая среда, она, грубо говоря, портится большими корпорациями, компаниями, с их точки зрения, глобализация и все это. Поэтому исчезает вот эта вот территория, на которой живут экосистемы, и это их больше волнует, нежели конкретно какая-то охота или еще что-то. Вот этот момент нам нужно обязательно попробовать, потому что есть большой запрос комьюнити, то есть общество на сохранение окружающей среды, но в то же время сохранение каких-то традиционных вещей. И есть такая небольшая оппозиция. Как вы думаете по этому поводу? Что вы думаете?
Я согласна полностью с Джошем, когда он говорит, что когда мы принимаем определенные цели, пусть это будут глобальные, пусть это будут национальные цели, должны быть услышаны все. Да. То есть это не процесс односторонний, тогда, когда, я не знаю, министерство или государство приходит и говорят, мы будем делать так. То есть это процесс, когда все вместе должны собраться и решить, какие цели должны быть включены. То есть на глобальном уровне это так и делается. То есть сейчас мы видим, что в глобальные цели Кунмин-Монреальские по биоразнообразию включена отдельная цель, где признается участие и обязательно, то есть участие и прав indigenous people, то есть.
А кто может быть в Казахстане indigenous people, как вы думаете?
Вообще мы когда разрабатывали первые, НБСА, первую концепцию по сохранению биоразнообразия, то есть мы должны придерживаться глобальных целей. Была цель одна из indigenous people. И мы тогда обсуждали с коллегами, кто на самом деле в Казахстане. То есть indigenous people — это же определение того, что то население, которое живет испокон веков на данной земле. Но если мы рассматриваем Казахстан, то испокон веков мы живем на этой земле. То есть это казахская земля, и это всегда земля принадлежала нам. То есть мне кажется, для нас в данном случае нам нужно рассматривать именно аксакалов, которые живут в регионах и которые знают эту природу. То есть это местное население для нас. То есть мы все знаем, то есть с нашего детства, когда делался выпас скота, то есть никогда казахи, то есть мы кочевой народ, в принципе, никогда не обитали на одной земле. То есть почему это происходило? Потому что скот выпасали на одной земле, зимовку мы проходили на другой. То есть это же и есть вот этот процесс, когда мы не деградируем одну экосистему, а мы кочуем, и за это время, пока мы на кочевке в другой экосистеме, оно восстанавливается, и мы возвращаемся сюда. То есть это и говорит о том, что местное население тех времен лучше знает, как управлять экосистемами и биоразнообразием, нежели... Не то, что нежели, но тем не менее, то есть как бы, чем наше поколение, которое сейчас вводит инновационные да, какие-то методы.
Меры, там,
да, но иногда эти методы могут разрушать экосистемы. Да? То есть они могут противоречить, поэтому я считаю, что должны быть услышаны все стороны, и в этой дискуссии должны участвовать все.
Да. Мне кажется, что вот в Казахстане вот такими людьми могут быть, например, те, кто сильно зависит от окружающей среды. Это, например, пастухи, фермеры, может быть, те, кто живет в отдаленных каких-то поселках и так далее, они, в принципе, могут считаться такими людьми, и голос которых надо услышать, да? И поэтому в UNDP есть такое понятие, как left no one behind. And left no one behind, it means that everybody should be, the voice of everybody should be at the negotiations, at the table, and we should take care about all voices and hear what the people need. Ну, сейчас я выяснил некоторые подробности, интересные вещи, которые вы делаете, Джош и Айнур, и делает программа развития ООН в Казахстане. И ну, вот для меня вот важный момент, вот когда часто с трибун говорят о том, что нам нужно обучать нашу молодежь, обучать наших детей, но я для себя в какой-то момент поймал на мысли, что моя молодежь, ну, мои дети как-то лучше меня знают, как нужно сохранять, там, охранять и все такое. Мне кажется, нам нужно не совсем работать. Ну, конечно, нам нужно работать с молодежью. Почему вот, например, очень быстро и очень легко вышли вот эти вот лесные, да, офсеты и так далее в Казахстане? Почему все на них надеются? Потому что всем с детства говорили, деревья поглощают СО2, выделяют кислород, и все это запомнили. Поэтому нам, мне кажется, нужно даже, я бы сказал, больше обучать именно старшее поколение и среднее поколение тому, что окружающая среда – это не то, что вот просто где-то там в заповеднике, да, и Боровом там, или в Аксу-Жабаглы, или еще где-то, да, это здесь и сейчас. И вот для меня важно, чтобы мы могли сохранять окружающую среду во всех аспектах. И это и загрязнение, и отходы, и загрязнение воздуха, и биоразнообразие, изменение климата, все что угодно, да, может быть здесь. Даже есть какие-то вещи, которые абсолютно немножко для других звучат дико, например, световое загрязнение, да, шумовое загрязнение. Но это тоже существует, и многие люди от этого страдают. Не только от этого, но от многих вещей. И нам важно развиваться гармонично с природой, с окружающей средой. Вот об этом, наверное, наш подкаст «1,5 градуса» и будет рассказывать в ближайшем будущем и сейчас. Спасибо.